With the LA Kings at the halfway mark of the season, it's time to hand out some midseason grades, that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and we are on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on today's show, we're going to preview tonight's important divisional matchup in Vancouver against the Canucks. We'll also give you an injury update on Doughty, and I have a retraction of sorts from something I said on Tuesday's show. Also going to talk about Connor McDavid and how the NHL treats him in light of some recent events involving the LA Kings. But we start with some mid-season grades for the LA Kings, and I will admit I was probably one of those teachers that was only going to fail you if you didn't show up for class, but 41 games into the season of the 82-game schedule for the Kings, and the record is 24-12-5, 53 points. That's good enough for third place in the Pacific Division. For me, the record in points total, probably a little bit better than I expected at the halfway mark, about to where I thought the Kings would be, though, in the standings. So let's give out some big picture grades, and we'll start with the front office, and I guess more specifically, Kings general manager Rob Blake. Now, just looking at the moves he made coming into the season, I think I would give Rob Blake a solid B grade. Again, just talking about the moves going into the season, we're not talking about his entire tenure as the general manager of the LA Kings, but getting rid of Pierre-Luc Dubois, who was obviously not a fit here for whatever reason, not retaining any of his salary, and then bringing in veteran goaltender, former Stanley Cup winner Darcy Kuemper, who's been great. You also bring in Warren Foegele, Joel Edmondson, and Tanner Jeannot to fit certain roles, which they've all filled about as well as could be expected. I'm still not a big fan of Joel Edmondson's contract, probably never will be. But as far as what has happened on the ice, what they've brought to the Kings, what the Kings were looking to fill as far as some places and some stylistic type of things as far as the way they were playing, I think it's gone about as well as could be expected. Now, I was a proponent of bringing in and bringing back former Kings forward Tyler Toffoli. I thought he was exactly what the Kings needed, a veteran forward, right-handed shot with Stanley Cup experience, who obviously we know very well it would be a great popular move, I think, amongst the fan base, and he filled a need. He could help out. He's a pure goal scorer. He could help out on the power play. Now, he didn't do that. So if he had done something like that, I would have given him an A. But a solid B grade, I think, for the Kings front office, specifically GM Rob Blake. Now, when you look at Blake's final grade coming up this season, kind of looking ahead, that's obviously going to depend on what he does at the trade deadline, if anything, and what he does with Vladislav Gavrikov. Those are the two big things going forward that will determine what his end of the season grade is. But can Rob Blake go out and get a veteran right-handed shot that can help out on the power play, a guy who's got playoff experience? And is he going to be able to re-sign Vladislav Gavrikov? Those are two big questions that will, again, determine what his final grade will be at the end of the year. I did see an article that I'll probably reference again when we get closer to the trade deadline, but this was from Matt Larkin, who writes for the Daily Faceoff. And he listed all the general managers and he put them in tiers as far as what they typically do at the trade deadline. The top tier was the Cowboys, GMs that fearlessly go all in and will sacrifice futures gladly in the name of chasing a cup. Tier 2 was pick their spots. These are usually active GMs that are ambitious with their trades, but it varies from year to year. The 3 tier was the wild card GMs. They've displayed cowboy potential, but haven't been buyers at the deadline often enough to develop patterns. And the 4th and final tier was the moderate spenders, More often than not, these GMs land intermediate level pieces to help their squad, but they don't have a history of big game hunting at the deadline. Guess where Rob Blake fit in on those tiers? You guessed it, tier 4, the moderate spenders. And I think that was accurately so. When you look at Rob Blake, his big moves at the deadline have been Jonas Korpisalo and Vladislav Gavrikov, and that came in the same year. Typically, Rob Blake is a guy that makes his moves before the season starts, typically with free agent signings and trades. Kevin Fiala, Pierre-Luc Dubois, those are guys they got in trade. Free agent signings like Philip Deneau, Victor Arvidsson. But again, really the only significant deal he's made at the deadline to really help the Kings was in 2023 when he added goalie Jonas Korpisalo and defenseman Vladislav Gavrikov. So it's not really in his nature to go out and make a big splash at the deadline, but can he do something to at least supplement this year's team? We shall wait and see. All right, let's look ahead, or let's look at the grade for the Kings forward group. I would say the dog is chiming in a little bit early. Not yet, Herbie. Hold on. The Kings forward group, I would think on the whole, I would probably give them a B. If you're looking individually, I think Andrei Kopitar, Adrian Kempe, Alex Laferriere, and Warren Foegele would all get A's in my mind. Kopi, 37 years old, 19th season. He's nearly a point per game player with 40 points in 41 games and still getting it done at both ends of the ice, still playing on the power play and the penalty kill. Adrian Kempe leads the team in goals with 20, second in points. Also a very underrated all-around defensive player. Alex Laferriere has already surpassed last season's totals in goals and points, has cooled off of late and now injured, unfortunately. We'll update you on that coming up. And then Warren Foegele, I think, has fit in like a glove in his first year in LA. Those guys are all A forwards, in my opinion. Alex Turcotte, Quentin Byfield, Tanner Jeannot, I think get B grades for me. The numbers on Turcotte and Q are not going to wow you, but I think both are very effective. I think they bring a ton of energy, some attitude on the ice, and make things happen positively. And yes, we'd all like to see Quentin Byfield's numbers be better as far as his offensive production, but I think he's contributing well enough at both ends, and he's starting to become kind of this shutdown center for the LA Kings and seems to have kind of embraced that role, which certainly could be valuable. Tanner Jeannot leads the team in hits pretty much every game and will chip in occasionally. I think his career was kind of trending in the wrong direction, going from Nashville and then to Tampa and then finally to LA, but I think he's filled his role very nicely for the Kings. And you've got Kevin Fiala, Philip Deneau, Trevor Lewis, Akil Thomas, and Samuel Helenius. I think they all get C grades. Lewis, Thomas, and Helenius have all been passable. For Thomas and Helenius, I think time on ice for them, certainly an issue where they're not getting a chance to show maybe what they can do on a nightly basis. But then again, younger players who are just getting their feet wet in the NHL. Deneau's numbers are down a bit, but he still plays solid defense. He's great on the penalty kill. He's a smart player. I still think he's getting a C grade. I think he's passing. And you might be surprised that I give Kevin Fiala a C, considering how much I talk about how he needs to be better all the time. But he still has 14 goals on the season. The -10 is pretty ugly, but I'm still giving him a C. But he needs to be more than a C-level player for the Kings to have success when they want it most in the playoffs. Got to be a B or an A-level player. Trevor Moore is the only player on the whole Kings roster I'm not giving a passing grade to. He gets a D. I know that he has one more goal than guys like Philip Deneau and Alex Turcotte and Tanner Jeannot, but he doesn't give the other things to me that those guys give. Coming off a 30-plus goal season, obviously the expectations were high, so it's kind of, I don't know, grading on a curve, I guess, for him. But he just, I don't know what's going on with Trevor Moore. He just doesn't seem to be contributing a lot. I mean, the energy's there. He seems to be trying, but it's just, he's just not having a good year. And again, he's another guy like Kevin Fiala that needs to be better in the second half of the season. As for the defensive group, Vladislav Gavrikov and Mike Anderson obviously are getting A's. They've been one of the top defensive pairings in the NHL. And I mentioned in our Pacific Division Roundtable show, which hopefully you have a chance to check out, that Vladislav Gavrikov is the Kings MVP at the midseason mark of the season for me. I think Joel Edmondson, Jacob Moverara, and Brant Clark get B grades. Moverara, I have to admit, is starting to impress me a little bit more with every game that goes by of late. I have really high expectations for Clark, and I hope to see more from him offensively in the second half, but I still think his rookie season has gone pretty well. Jordan Spence, Kyle Burrows, Andreas Englund, Caleb Jones all get C's for me. Spence a few weeks ago might have gotten a D, but he has picked up his game of late, which has been good to see. As for the goalies, as far as the position goes, and I think for the Kings defensively, they get a solid B overall, B plus maybe even. For the goaltenders, I give him a B grade. Darcy Kemper gets an A. I thought he'd be good. He's been better than I expected. David Riddick, I think, probably gets a B. He gets an A grade at home, but he gets a C grade on the road, so that evens out to a B. So maybe a B plus, A minus grade for the LA Kings goalie. As for the coaching staff, I think I'd give him a B. I like Jim Hiller. I think he does a lot of outside the box thinking. I like some of his in-game moves. However, the shortcomings on the power play cannot be overlooked. It's a D, if not an F. So that has to knock them down a notch. So, and their inability to kind of adjust to it, to change, to do something different. Hopefully we see something in the second half of the season, because frankly, it's been so bad. I would be in favor of completely scrapping it and starting over from scratch, if that's even possible. But again, overall, I think the Kings as a team probably get a B grade on the season so far for me, maybe even a B plus. Up next, an important game for the LA Kings tonight, and it's important on a couple different levels. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, no matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process. Find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews. Plus, you only pay for the quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit and get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, the Kings start that second half of the NHL season in Vancouver against the Canucks tonight. As mentioned, LA checks in with a record of 24-12-5. They're currently in third place in the Pacific Division, seventh place in the Western Conference, and 12th in the NHL with 53 points in 41 games. It should be pointed out the Kings have played the fewest number of games of any team in the NHL at this point. Kings have lost their last two games while scoring a total of one goal, where, it should be pointed out as well, though, that the Kings have given up a total of 3 goals in those 2 losses. Kings have had one 3-game losing streak all season. That was in early October, and in 2 of those 3 games, there were overtime losses. So the Kings looking to avoid their second 3-game losing streak of the season. Kings last game this past Monday, a 1-0 loss to the Oilers in Edmonton. Kings check in with a 10-10-4 record on the road this season. Vancouver Canucks are 19-14-10. 10, by far the most overtime shootout losses in the NHL. They're 5th in the Pacific Division, 9th in the Western Conference, and 16th in the NHL with 48 points in 43 games. Canucks have been inconsistent all season. They started off losing their first 3 games. Then they won 7 of 9, but since have only won 2 or more games in a row twice. Things haven't been going well of late for Vancouver, where they have lost 10 of 13, record of 3-5-5 over that stretch. Their last game was a 6-1 loss in Winnipeg to the Jets. At home, the Canucks have not been good, a record of 7-8-6. Kings are led in scoring by captain Anze Kopitar's 40 points. Adrian Kempe has 39 points and leads the team with 20 goals. The Canucks are led by defenseman Quinn Hughes, who has 47 points. Jake DeBrusk is their leading goal scorer in his first year with the team. He has 17. Kings are expected to go with number 1 goalie Darcy Kemper. He checks in with a 12-3-5 record, 2.11 goals against average, which is second in the NHL, and a .923 save percentage, which is third in the NHL. Kemper was great in his last start, that tough 1-0 loss to the Oilers, where he allowed 1 goal on 30 shots. Kemper is 6-2-4 on the road this season, 2.19 goals against average and a .919 save percentage. Canucks are expected to go with their number one goalie, Thatcher Demko, who's been battling injuries all season. He has not started the team's last two games. The San Diego native checks in with a 2-2-3 record, 3.17 goals against average, and an .883 save percentage. When he's healthy and when he's on his game, he is one of the better goalies in the West. But obviously that has not been the case so far this season. His last start and his first start since coming back from his latest injury saw him allow 2 goals on 20 shots in a 2-0 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. Checking the matchup by the team stats, Kings check in 18th in the NHL in average goals scored per game, 2.95. That's a pretty significant dip over the last few games because of the scoring drop they've been in. Vancouver, 22nd in the league. They're averaging 2.88 goals per game. Kings are still number one in the NHL in goals allowed per game, 2.47. The Canucks are 22nd in the league, 3.14. Kings power play is 29th in the league, 14.9%. The success rate. Kings last 12 road games, they have 1 power play goal on the road. On the season, the Kings have 6 power play goals on the road, but 3 of them came in 1 game, and that was really early in the year, that wild 8-7 overtime loss to the Senators. So again, in their last 12 road games, the Kings have 1 power play goal. That's pretty pathetic. Vancouver, 14th in the NHL in the power play at 21.8%. LA is 9th in the league on the penalty kill, 82.1%. Canucks are 12th at 81.3%. Injury news for the Kings. Alex Laferriere is out for tonight's game with an upper body injury. Looks like he may not play in the final game of the road trip as well, coming up on Saturday in Seattle. Until we get more of an update on his status, right now he is listed as day-to-day. Obviously has not been placed on injured reserve. So until we know anything different, Alex Laferriere should be considered day-to-day, but it does seem like from what we're hearing, definitely not playing tonight and probably won't play on Saturday as well. So how does that affect the Kings lineup? Well, I expect the top 2 lines will stay the same, but the third line with Laferriere normally on it, I would assume that Tanner Jeannot will move off the fourth line to the third line, and I would expect to see either Akil Thomas or Samuel Hellenius in on the wing on the fourth line with Trevor Lewis. I'd like to see Akil Thomas personally. And who knows? It's possible he could even be moved up to the third line and they keep Jeannot on the fourth line. But I'm expecting Jeannot to take over Laferriere's spot on the third line. And we'll see if Akil Thomas draws into the lineup. This is the second of 3 meetings this season between the two teams. First meeting on November 7th in LA went to the Canucks 4-2. Quentin Byfield and Vladislav Gavrikov had the goals for LA. Darcy Kemper took the loss, allowing 3 goals on 22 shots. So this game suddenly feels like an important game for the LA Kings, who are statistically better in most categories than the Vancouver Canucks. Canucks are not playing well of late, and they have not been good at home all season. Their goalie is coming off an injury and likely not yet into the flow of the season. He's been in and out of the lineup. Seems like a game the Kings should win. That said, as I mentioned, the Kings only have 1 goal in their last 2 games, 5 goals total in their last 4 games. Obviously, that's a concern. Hopefully, we will not only see a win tonight, but some goals on the board as well. I think the Kings will emphasize getting pucks on net and getting to the net. Make it simple and keep the basics going when things aren't going well. Get screens, get deflections, get shots, go to the net. Blue-collar hockey. The Kings have been very good at times at doing that this year, better than last year. So I would expect to see a lot more of that tonight. For Vancouver, obviously every game is an important game for them. They're fighting for their lives to try and get back in the playoffs. Right now, not a playoff team, out of the playoff race, not a wild card team. And they're facing a Kings team that is ahead of them in the standings. So a direct opportunity for them to gain ground on a team they are trying to chase. So should be a good game, a big game tonight for both the Kings and Canucks coming up in Vancouver. Drew Doughty closer to returning, and I offer a retraction of sorts. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. And those of us that live here in Southern California, so lucky we live in a place where we can experience so many live events, sports, of course, but it's not only about sports. You got theater events, concerts, and comedy shows, even TV shows, right? You can check out the tapings of TV shows. Well, when you check out those live events, no matter where you are, you need to do what I do, and that is use Gametime for all my ticket needs. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks, and it makes getting tickets even easier. They filter out the fluff, so you only see incredible deals on great seats, and you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. The all-in pricing feature shows you the total up front with no surprises at checkout, and you will get the lowest price guaranteed, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, we have some news to pass along involving Kings veteran defenseman Drew Doughty. He is expected to join the team in team practices, wearing the red non-contact jersey when the team returns home from this 5-game road trip. Kings shared a video on their social media account and that showed Drew Doughty skating and him talking about how he was feeling. And he said that he was shocked how good he felt back on the ice, better than expected. Said that he didn't think he'd be skating that well, just getting back on the ice. So certainly from the mouth of Drew Doughty, sounds like things are going very well. He said something about, I'll be a pain in the ass soon enough trying to get back in the lineup. Yeah, Drew Doughty back on the ice, wearing the red non-contact jersey, and will be with the team in practices starting this coming week. So sounds like Drew's getting pretty close to returning for the LA Kings. And I had said kind of all along, the way the Kings had been playing, no need to rush Drew Doughty back, especially the way they played defensively. But if things start to turn a little bit and start to go in a bit of a negative direction, I'm not saying they would ever rush Drew Doughty back, but maybe not take it as slowly as they want to. Maybe the luxury of that wears off if the Kings don't kind of turn it around here in a little bit. I'm not saying that's yet. I'm just saying if things continue the way they have in the last few games, then maybe they're like, you know what, Drew, we could use you back. We could use a spark from you and get you back in the lineup, maybe a little bit sooner than we had thought. I did mention Alex Laferriere injured in the game against Edmonton, and that I didn't know. I don't think nobody knew that. So I had said on our Tuesday show, I had a problem with head coach Jim Hiller benching Alex Laferriere for what I thought was the penalty that he took against Connor McDavid that resulted in a 4-on-4 skating opportunity, and the Oilers scored their game-winning goal on that. And Laferriere didn't play the rest of the game, and we all assumed it was because he got benched. And Hiller didn't exactly help things after the game when he pointed out specifically that he did not like that penalty by Laferriere. And when he was asked any comment on why he didn't play in the third period, he had no comment. So it seemed to back up the theory that he was punishing him for that penalty. Well, since Laferriere is now hurt, maybe that's not the case. And if he was hurt and that's the reason why he didn't go back in the game, then obviously I offer a retraction of my criticism of Jim Hiller. So if that in fact was the case, then obviously he didn't play him because he was hurt. As far as the play that Laferriere was hurt on, I know some Kings fans were upset about it. I'll be honest with you, I didn't have too much of a problem with it. Laferriere did kind of duck down along the boards as McDavid was coming in to hit him. Now, McDavid did kind of put an elbow into his head, but Laferriere did kind of put himself in a vulnerable position. I will just say this. If the opposite was turned around, if that was Laferriere hitting McDavid that way and he was called for a penalty, I'd have been pretty upset about it. So I don't know. I didn't think what McDavid did to him was that bad. Although McDavid certainly has been getting away with some things. He had a high stick on Vladislav Gavrikov earlier in the game that was blatant. It wasn't called. And Adrian Kempe was fined $9,000 for a slew foot on McDavid in that same game. Now, in Wednesday's game, the Oilers played in Minnesota against the Wild, and McDavid got away with a sneaky elbow to the head of Wild forward Marcus Johansson, and that caused an injury. Now, it was subtle, but he did hit him in the head with his elbow. And I could see how the officials on the ice may have missed it, but the NHL had a chance to review it, just like they did with the Adrian Kempe play, which wasn't called on the ice, and they decided not to fine Connor McDavid. So I will say I don't have an issue with sports leagues protecting their stars. For example, in the NFL, and I'm not a New England Patriots fan by any stretch, years ago, Tom Brady got hit in the knee, out for the season. The next year, the NFL creates a rule that you cannot hit a quarterback in the knees or below. You can't hit a quarterback low, the Tom Brady rule. And that rule stands today. So I get sports leagues protecting their stars. They need their stars to play for the good of the league. So if Connor McDavid gets some calls that maybe other players don't get, in an effort to kind of protect those guys, I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is those same players also getting preferential treatment when they're doing something dirty or illegal or over the line, which we've seen McDavid do, again, subtly, but that should have been a fine, at least a fine for the elbow to the head of Marcus Johansson. So I'm okay with the stars getting protected because you need those stars in the league for business, but not okay with a double standard that you let them get away with more things. So I will just say that about Connor McDavid and in general, the idea of protecting stars, that's okay, but don't give them like free reign to do anything else they want as well. That's just not fair at all. All right, we'll wrap it up by checking the Pacific Division standings going into tonight. Vegas on top of the Pacific, 61 points, 29, 12, and 3. They're not in action tonight. Edmonton is playing tonight after they just played the Wild and won last night. They're in Colorado to face the Avalanche. Edmonton is in second place, 59 points, 28, 13, and 3. Kings are 6 points behind the Oilers, so they could use a win, and an Oilers loss tonight for sure to try and get that a little bit closer. Kings are 24, 12, and 5, as I mentioned, 53 points, playing in Vancouver. Calgary's in fourth place. They're in St. Louis to face the Blues tonight. They've got a record of 21, 15, and 7, 49 points. So they're only 4 points back of LA. They win tonight and the Kings lose. Suddenly that gets a little bit closer. And for Vancouver, 48 points on the season. So they are 5 points back of LA. So a big opportunity for them to pick up points. 19, 14, and 10 the record for the Vancouver Canucks. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen to watch Locked On the Kings every day, busy show on Friday. We'll have a recap of the Kings-Canucks game and also have our weekly Kings fan feedback show as well. Give you your chance to share your thoughts on what's going on with the LA Kings. So a big show coming up on Friday. If you want to get an email in for the feedback show, it is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And you can always leave your comments on the comment section if you're watching on YouTube. Appreciate that. We'd also love for you to stay interactive with the show by following us on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram. We're at Locked On LA Kings. And if you want to submit a question or a comment for the feedback show, you can do it there if you'd like as well. Thank you for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thanks for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you on Friday. And as always, go Kings go.